host, John Light, founder, president, CEO, over at Sabretooth Recruiting. And I'm really fortunate today because over a year ago, I met Alejandro Martinez, and we had a great conversation or two along the way. But at the time, he was at the final stretch of leaving a firm he'd been with, I think, 20 years in the consulting advisory space, and has now gone and started his own firm and has a great story to share. And so, Alejandro, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, John. It's a pleasure for me.
Excellent. Well, look, I think the best way to get started is just if we could maybe get a 90-second rundown, man, of where you came from, your pathway, and what your endeavor is today.
Yeah, sure. So on my side, I've been 20 years working with data and AI. I always say I feel passionate about working with data. I enjoy a lot finding things. I consider myself a positive technologist. Like in terms of, I believe technology can make our life easier. And as humans, we need to just embrace it. It's not about replacing or not replacing. Right now, I have my role is the CEO of Propelling Tech. That is the new company we have created, and we follow an approach of technology-driven approach in terms of how we are delivering our services. So I always say we put technology beforehand before delivering our services. That changed the whole equation.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about changing an equation. You know, I tend to think, especially when you're talking to people who are starting businesses, and we want to disrupt this. And disruption is this big buzzword. I think sometimes that word is overused, but I like the idea in a sense, and if I understand it correctly, by putting the technology first before the service, part of what you're doing is you are punching through layers of inefficiency. And I kind of see that, understand that from the perspective I have as a headhunter, that most talent acquisition processes today are basically the same processes people used in the 70s, in the 80s. Or as my kids would say, Dad, that's so last century. So, yeah, that one doesn't sting at all, does it, as we get older? But I'm curious to know, is that kind of what you see here? Is, yeah, we could say there's disruption, but really what you're doing is you're taking something that's inefficient relative to what's available in the market and applying technology prior to services to scrape in and gather efficiencies that allow you to deliver more strongly and have better results for your clients.
Correct. And in fact, one of the pieces that I have discovered is when we mention the word disruption, people get afraid of that word. Like, I don't know, anything related to change, to disruption, it creates fears. It creates, oh, this is risky. So normally we say it's a controlled risk innovation. Like, it's not about innovating on jumping out of a window. It's innovating knowing what is behind that window. In terms of technology, I always say there are things that we keep doing. Technology has evolved a lot in the last 5 years, and we keep doing the same things over and over. It goes around different approaches on why we keep doing that, but that's what we're trying. We're trying to speed up the time to markets on the solutions by bringing technology into the place. We're trying to reduce the total cost of ownership, the investment that a customer is doing. We're trying to define or lower the technical debt a customer has. So the amount of services that we provide, if we compare against a normal consulting project that is 100%, we go with a 30. So we deliver value faster, but in shorter, let's say, amount of money or time in general when we are doing that.
So really and truly, I go back, you're delivering greater efficiency, getting more bang for your buck. And I think there is a value prop in there. A lot of companies, some of my backstory, and we've been working on developing our own AI tool for talent acquisition specifically. We're just concerned about solving a problem, not a whole host of problems. And I've been a big believer that you take the technology and you adapt to it, because it's kind of it's kind of your colleague that's alongside of you who's just an amazing number cruncher and gives you the chance to really slice and dice data and understand what's going on in ways we haven't seen before. Doesn't mean it's the final arbiter of what the decision is going to be.
Correct. And at the end is, I always say that there are different use cases. So it could be technology, for example, to optimize the consumption of a cloud database. Like how, like if you're spending a lot with cloud data warehousing, how you can optimize that by using technologies and algorithms. It could be that you're doing a migration from a legacy BI into a modern BI on the cloud, how we can do that in a more automated way, rather than just getting people doing migration and kind of mimicking what is here to migrate to the new place, how we could automate this with technology. Even I call it, like right now we talk about a lot about the AI, and everyone is AI, it will change our jobs and everything. But in reality is the convergence of a lot of different technologies. Is blockchain, is AI, is quantum is coming up, but it could be edge computing with Industry 4.0 or ESG projects. Is the convergence of all these technologies that is helping us do things in a different way and executing those things in a different way.
So it sounds like a fantastic opportunity. I mean, yeah, there's a measured risk, I suppose, but a fantastic and almost immeasurable opportunity to change how we go about things. Maybe not change our culture per se, but change the speed and efficiency that we get to decisions and whatnot. So with that in mind, I'm curious. I mean, if you were going to define what's the biggest problem that you can solve for a potential client, Alejandro, what would that problem be?
I would say there are different things. I always consider we're solving the same need I used to solve in my last 20 years in terms of I'm helping companies modernize their digital approach or digital transformation in general. The only piece is we're doing that differently. So the biggest problem, knowing that this is what we're solving, the biggest issue that we're solving here is we're trying to do this with allowing the teams in our customers to be fully autonomous. For them, have a solution but be able to maintain it, be able to own it, not be dependent on a consulting company to run it. We're trying to bring small pieces into what we call, I don't know, there are technologies that you don't need to introduce, but there are some technologies that will change the whole puzzle on how that ecosystem is working, that is going to facilitate, I don't know, less investment, easy to do prototyping, business people to be able to participate without having technical knowledge with no code, low code technologies. So in reality, although we are solving the same thing I used to solve in terms of the need, we're solving that in a different way. I normally do the analogy with taxi drivers and Waymo in San Francisco. The transportation need is both sides are solving it. The way how it's being solved with Waymo is completely different with the taxi driver. It's more scalable, is easier. Some people could say, I don't know, is more secure, less secure. But that's the approach, like how we use technology and make it more scalable for the customers. So it's kind of double problem what we're trying to solve here.
Wow, interesting. Okay, big question, selfish question coming from me. When we talk about, okay, let's apply these technologies and then worry about our services, and we're looking at punching through systems that are inefficient given today's context and technology, where are we today relative to the talent necessary to execute on projects of this nature? You know, because one of the big questions you get, I'm sure you get asked a lot about AI, and AI is multifaceted. You know, whether you're dealing with ML or deep learning or NLP or what, I mean, this is a whole host, like you said, of convergence of technologies. But talent's got to be part of that equation.
In fact, it is. And I was reading an article today where they were saying we need to make sure companies don't make the mistake they did with Gen AI 1.0. And when they go to Gen AI 2.0 and they call it more like agentic AI, companies are not making the same mistake. When they go to the mistake, what happened on the pilots and why people using Gen AI wasn't really getting executed or getting those things into production or getting benefit from that, it goes to the talent. So they were saying, we got use in general on technology that we adopt technology and then we adapt whatever. I call it even keeping the pace. Like sometimes you implement a software because someone else is implementing that software and you don't want to be behind. Like this company in this industry is doing this, I want to do it the same. Like reality is when we are working with technology, the biggest thing behind is the process. Like what is the value, like what is the differentiation we want to achieve? I call it even the strategy. Like what do you want to get? How you want to provide value to your customers? What are the process behind? Then the technology comes. So one of the pieces that was found on Gen AI 1.0 is that a lot of the solutions were built by IT without taking into account the full process on the business. Even some people were saying we forgot what we used to do 20 years ago when we were implementing technology. The first thing we needed to do was to understand the process on entity relation, like how this process works, and then mapping that into the software. So they were saying that skill is missing, and that's the approach that we believe business is so key on this. Like, I mean, they know what they need, they know the value proposition, they need to be able to interact with the data, even if it's in a data lake, without doing PySpark or Python code. No, just with natural language, being able to ask the questions and get the value of the insights that they're getting.
Man, that's, it's funny how we get all excited about technology and we forget to do the fundamentals. I mean, we all started with baby steps, right? And we know that if you're going to turn a company around, engage and execute on a project, it's people, process, technology. They got to work in concert. And if you leave the process piece of it out, it doesn't really matter what the people in technology do. They're going to fail.
Completely. And in fact, technology comes, I always say, in terms of this equation, is the last one. Like you need to start by defining those goals, understanding the process, having the right people, then you can add the technology. And I always do the same. It's like cars. I don't know, there are cars that all the brands might be the same in the same category. But the driving style might be different depending on what you want. So it doesn't mean the car is bad. No, if you want more security, use this one. If you want to get more performance but feel it more sporty, you get this one. Is the same with technology. Depending on what you want to achieve, maybe a software or a solution is better than the other one. I always say if you do what everyone else is doing, it's a bad time, because at the end you're just implementing what someone else did before. So in reality, you're trying to invest, you're saying we're going to increase our competitive advantage. No, you're just doing what someone else did 1 year before you. So you're just keeping the pace. So all the investment you're doing, it is going into, I don't know, a sinkhole completely. Like you're not fully investing on what you need to do on that sense.
Well, it's not giving you an advantage, right? I mean, everything we do when we look at technology, a transformation project, whatever it might be, it's a gambit to gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
Completely.
And it's one thing to have a level playing field, right? But if you and I put the same equipment on, the same kit, the same boots, the same guards, the same shorts and jersey and all this, and went out and played soccer, went out and played football, you'd probably kill me, because it's not a level playing field. You grew up and you played it. I didn't. I'd get murdered. We flip that around and play American football, I would probably kill you. And so how do we get that to where we take a level playing field, but recognize that within our context, we have certain advantages that we can amplify through technology, and having the right people and the right processes? I think that's a challenging question. I think because you got to look at it from a holistic revenue enablement operations standpoint for a business, not just from, well, IT can do this. And it's not a knock on IT. It's just the reality of the marketplace and business in general today.
And at the end goes to, I always say every company is a technology company. The piece is you don't know it yet, but the customers are more digital than ever. So that means that the journey of a customer is completely different than what it used to be. Just with that piece, you need to be more technology driven on what you're doing. But if you go to supply, like it's completely, it should be technology driven. Even after COVID, all the issues with supply chain, like all the stockouts and everything should be solved with a technology driven approach. If we talk, for example, about agriculture with sensors, and it's a technology driven, like it's, so a lot of the things, even R&D, how you use technology, you can drive more results faster than before if you don't use the technology.
Awesome. Well, let me ask you this, Alejandro, last question, but I think it's a big one. If someone wants to dive deeper with you when it comes to, hey, putting technology before services, knocking through these inefficient layers of process and technology out there, what's the best way for someone to find you and get in touch?
So to me, they can follow or find all my details on everything on my webpage, alejomartinez.com. And also on the propellingtech.com webpage or even LinkedIn page, they can find all the information about us, what we're doing, and how we do it. Like we are trying to be authentic and not to go into the same approach that everyone else was doing before.
Yeah, good. And if anyone listening is connected with me on LinkedIn, I'm connected with Alejandro, so feel free to browse through or ask me for an introduction. I'm happy to make it. Otherwise, catch up with him at propellingtech.com. Alejandro, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.